Have you ever been placed at a table and understood instantly, without a word, exactly what it meant? The seat you were given, the people beside you, the people you weren't near. No one said anything. They didn't need to. Seating is its own language. Where you sit tells the room who you are before you say a single word. Today, we're looking at one dinner scene in the Other Bennet Sister, one act of deliberate placement, and inside it, one of the most underrated lessons in power and class this film has to offer. Because the person placed in the lowest seat at the table, she's the one who ends up winning the entire room. Here's how she does it and why it still matters today. Welcome to Lady Susanna. This summer, we're dedicating an entire series to the Other Bennet Sister, and this is episode 3. So pour yourself some tea, settle in as we decode what's really happening beneath the surface of the films you love, the hidden language of class, money, taste, and status that most people never notice, but everyone feels. Now, let's get back to that table, because to read this scene properly, you need to understand what a Regency dinner table actually was. Here's something most people don't know about Regency dinner parties. The seating was never random. Every seat at the table was a statement. Where you were placed told the whole room exactly what the host thought of you, your rank, your relevance, your social value. The best seat went to the most important guest. Sitting near someone powerful was itself a kind of endorsement. It says, this person belongs here. And then there was the other end of the table, the seats beside the men no one was really considering. The elderly relative, the socially harmless, the financially uncertain, the gentleman who had aged out of relevance. No one fought over these seats because no one needed to. Everyone already knew what they meant. I'm calling this the spinster seat. It's not a historical term, it's a precise one. It's the seat a host gives you, consciously or not, when they've already decided you're no longer in circulation. You're not being insulted openly, you're being reclassified, moved off the active table, and placed somewhere easier to ignore. It's not exile, it's more subtle than that. It's a verdict delivered entirely through furniture. And at the dinner table, that's exactly where Mary is placed. Not near the men the Bennet sisters are meant to attract. Not within reach of the people who matter. She's been arranged beside the marginal, the overlooked, the socially invisible. No one said a word. They didn't need to. But here's what this episode is really about. In the hands of the right person, the spinster seat is not a punishment. It's a perch. Let me walk you through the scene, because every moment is a calculated move. Move 1, Caroline's compliment. Miss Bingley notices Mary's dress. She says something nice about it. Warm enough, polite enough. On the surface, a compliment. But it isn't a compliment at all. I'm calling it a taste weapon, and once you know what one is, you'll spot them everywhere. A taste weapon is a compliment designed to remind you of your place. It doesn't insult you, it notices you in a way that makes clear you needed to be noticed, that you couldn't have commanded the room's attention on your own. It says underneath the warmth, I am above you, and I want the room to see that I see that. The dress comment works exactly this way. It draws attention to Mary, and in drawing attention to Mary, it draws attention to the gap between them. Caroline is using taste as a measuring stick. This is how taste gets used as a weapon, not through insults, through observations. through the perfectly calibrated compliment that means something very different than its literal words. What a lovely dress is so you can, in the right mouth, at the right table, with the right pause, land as one of the cruelest things said all evening. Here's what makes Caroline particularly interesting. She isn't natural at this. She has money and she knows the rules, but she doesn't feel them. She has to deploy distinction because she doesn't actually embody it. Every move she makes is slightly too visible. The effort shows. That's the tell of someone performing class rather than living it. The taste weapon is her signature move, and she's used it so many times she probably doesn't even notice she's doing it anymore. Move 2. The seating. Mary is seated. The room arranges itself. The conversation flows towards the important guest. Mary is where she is. And now, here is what every film we've ever watched tells us should happen next. Mary should feel the sting. She should register the insult. She should begin to build her response. The audience should lean forward waiting for the moment. She delivers the line that humiliates Caroline and flips the room. We want that. We have been trained to want that. The public comeback, the underdog moment, the withering line. But Mary doesn't do it. And that choice is the most interesting thing in the entire scene. Move 3. The pivot. Instead of going cold, instead of staring at the middle distance with the tight jaw that says, I am above this, Mary does something completely disarming. She turns to the person beside her. She engages. She becomes genuinely interested in the conversation available to her in the worst seat at the table. This is the master class, because the spinster seat only works as an insult if the person sitting in it acts like someone who has been insulted. The placement is a verdict, but it only lands if you accept it. If you stiffen or withdraw, or perform dignity under pressure, you are confirming the host's framing. You are saying, yes, I understand, this is a diminishment, and I am responding accordingly. Mary simply doesn't respond accordingly. She proceeds as if the verdict hasn't been delivered, or as if she'd heard it, considered it, and found it completely unrelated to anything she actually cared about. That is power. A very specific, very rare kind of power, only available to people who are genuinely not performing for the room. I want to give a name to what Mary is doing in the scene, because it doesn't have an obvious one in everyday language. I'm calling it soft dominance. Soft dominance is not weakness. It's not passivity. It's power, just delivered differently. Instead of taking up space loudly, it works through a genuine presence. Instead of commanding the room, it simply refuses to need the room's approval. It is the quiet authority of someone who came to enjoy themselves and does exactly that, even when the room expected them to shrink. Compare that to what Caroline is doing. Caroline's approach is what I call hard dominance. She controls the seating. She delivered the compliment designed to sting. She makes sure everyone in the room sees the hierarchy she's performing. It's visible, it's loud, and it only works under one condition. Hard dominance needs a reaction. It needs the other person to flinch, to fight back, to do something to confirm the hierarchy landed. Mary gives it nothing. She takes another bite of dinner. She turns to the person beside her. She asks a question. She simply continues. And when the target doesn't respond, something quietly devastating happens to the person who threw the weapon. Caroline has performed superiority for a room that can't quite locate the effect. The hierarchy she tried to enforce didn't solidify. The move misfired. Mary, meanwhile, is having a conversation. This is soft dominance. She doesn't try to win by taking Caroline on. She wins by not treating it as a competition at all. She behaves like someone who came to dinner for dinner, not to manage her position in a game that someone else designed. Now, this is not obliviousness. It's not the accidental confidence of someone who didn't notice the insult. Mary noticed. Mary always notices. What she chooses is something much harder than a comeback. She chooses not to let the insult write the rest of her evening. Let me go back to the dress comment, because I think it's worth reading carefully. The comment about Mary's dress, the tone that is somehow both warm and dismissive at the same time, is not a compliment. It is a very specific social maneuver. And the reason it's so effective is that it gives Mary almost nothing to push back against. If Caroline had simply been unkind, Mary can respond. The room would know what happened. There would be a clear record, but a compliment? An admiring observation? What an interesting dress. It's so distinctive. Try to object to that, and you look paranoid. You look like someone searching for an insult that wasn't there. You look insecure, which, in the logic of the room, actually confirms exactly the hierarchy Caroline was trying to establish in the first place. That's the design. The taste weapon is built to be undefeatable through direct confrontation. What Caroline is really doing is invoking the room's shared understanding of taste as a ranking system. She is saying, without saying it, just not quite right. It's not an attack. It's a classification. And classifications delivered with a smile are almost impossible to argue against, because taste in this moment is not about beauty. It's about belonging. It's a way of asking, do you speak this room's language? Or are you still working from a translation? The compliment says as politely as possible, your version and ours are not the same. Now here is where Mary does something I find genuinely radical. She doesn't try to prove her taste is better. She doesn't reach for a countermove in the same game. She doesn't even perform indifference, which would itself be a kind of performance. She just steps out of the game entirely, not because she doesn't understand it, but because she doesn't accept Caroline's rules. Caroline thinks that dinner is about social positioning, about who is seen next to whom, whose taste registers above whose, who ends up looking relevant by the end of the night. Mary seems to think dinner is about dinner, about the conversation in front of her, about the actual people in the seats beside her. Because she proceeds as if that's true, something surprising happens. The people seated beside her, the ones placed there because the room had already decided they didn't matter, start having a real conversation. A real evening. The corner of that table that was meant to be a social dead zone becomes the most genuinely alive part of the room. Mary didn't retaliate. She didn't perform dignity. She just had dinner and ended up winning the room. That is the spinster seat as a perch. The placement only has power over the person who is organized around status as their primary value. Mary isn't, so the placement doesn't reach her. She was too busy being present to notice she was supposed to feel small. Let me be honest about something. Every instinct we have watching the scene is screaming for the comeback. We want Mary to look at Caroline and say something so devastating, so brilliant that the entire table turns. We want Caroline to flush. We want the room to shift. We want Mary to win, visibly, publicly, in a way that everyone present will remember. We want this because we've all been there. We've all been placed in a version of that seat. We've all received a version of that compliment. And the fantasy of the perfect response, the one that restores hierarchy on your own terms, is deeply, genuinely satisfying. But here's the problem with the comeback. It gives Caroline exactly what she was after. Think about what Caroline actually needed from that interaction. She needed Mary to feel it, to register the insult, to respond to it either by shrinking or by fighting back. Because both responses say the same thing. The hierarchy you just created is real, and I accept it. The moment Mary fires back, even brilliantly, even in a way that embarrasses Caroline, she has confirmed that Caroline's terms matters, that taste is the relevant competition, that the seating arrangement was something worth responding to. She would have become someone who fights over dinner placements, someone whose whole evening got organized around a woman who frankly doesn't deserve that much attention. Mary refuses, not because she's passive, not because she doesn't see what's happening, but because she has somewhere better to put her energy. That is soft dominance, not fighting back, refusing to fight on someone else's terms entirely. The spinster seat didn't stay in Regency England. It just changed its costume. You've seen it. The work meeting where certain people get pulled into the important conversations and others are left at the edge of the room. The group dinner where the seating tells you, without anyone saying so, who the host considers worth impressing. The comment section, the group chat, the industry event where some voices get amplified and others get placed beside the people that don't quite matter. The structure is identical, only the setting has changed. And in every one of those situations, you face the same choice Mary faces. You can spend the evening trying to move yourself to the better table, performing that might get you noticed by the right people. Or you can have the conversation in front of you, fully, genuinely, without one eye on the room. That second option sounds like giving up. It isn't. It's actually the harder choice because it means letting go of the performance completely and just being present. Think about the most interesting person you've ever met at a gathering. Almost certainly, they weren't scanning the room. They weren't positioning. They were just there, completely in conversation with you, as if nothing else was happening. That quality, that presence, that's the thing people remember. That's what Mary has. At the worst table, in the dress Caroline just made a point of noticing. She is the most genuinely present person in that room, and presence, it turns out, is its own kind of power. Mary Bennet is given the worst seat at the table. She receives a backhanded compliment about her dress. She is placed beside the people the room has already written off. The social message is clear, and it is not kind. And she responds with something Caroline never anticipated: the unperformed self. Not a comeback, not a performance of dignity, not wit deployed at exactly the right moment. Just her, actually present, actually engaged, not playing to the room at all. This is the concept I want you to carry out of this episode. Unperformed self is not passivity. It is not caring. The unperformed self. It is something far more difficult than either of those things. It is the decision to stop organizing yourself around a room that has already decided your value and just be in the conversation directly in front of you instead. Caroline came to that table armed. She had the placement, the compliment, the audience. She had every tool a social performance requires. Yet Mary brought something Caroline had no counter for. A person who wasn't performing at all. And here is the truth about that. You cannot diminish someone who isn't competing. You cannot win against someone who has refused to play. The hierarchy only holds as long as everyone agrees to stand inside it. Mary steps outside it entirely. Not with a speech, not with a scene, just with her full, genuine, undivided attention, pointed somewhere else. That is the power of the unperformed self. It is far harder and far more threatening to a room than any comeback could ever be. This is what we've been building towards. Across this entire series, in episode 1, we watched Mary absorb the plainness tax, the invisible cost of moving through a world that had already priced her low. In episode 2, we watched her mother enforce that pricing from the inside, turning her own daughter into a mirror she couldn't bear to look at. And now in episode 3, we watch Mary do something neither of those episodes could have predicted. She stops organizing her life around the verdict, not dramatically, not with a speech, just quietly, completely. She puts her attention somewhere more worth having. And in doing so, she becomes the most powerful person at a table that was designed to make her feel small. That is what this whole series has been about. Value is never fixed. It depends entirely on who is in the room, what they've been taught to notice, and whether you've decided their opinion is the final word. Mary Bennet decides it isn't. Here is what I want to leave you with. Think about the spinster seat you've been given, the placement, the comment about your relevance. How much energy have you spent trying to move to a better table? And what conversations did you miss right in front of you in the seat you were already in because you were too focused on the seat to be present in it? Leave it in the comments. The most interesting conversations always happen there. Next week, we leave Mary's table and we walk into an entirely different kind of power. We're moving into our fall lineup, and we're starting with someone who has fascinated people for over 200 years. Not because he's warm, not because he's easy, but because he never once adjusted himself to fit the room. The room adjusted to him. Mr. Darcy, a man who says almost nothing, who performs almost nothing, who seems on the surface like pure arrogance. But what if it isn't arrogance at all? What if Darcy already understood something that most people spent their whole lives trying to learn? That's next week. I'll see you then.